Hello and welcome to the big interview from Brass Pass TV. It doesn't get much bigger than today's interview because our very special guest today is Ulf Rosenberg, the president of the European Brass Band Association. Ulf, welcome to Brass Pass TV today. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Great being with you. Looking forward to it. Thank you for the invitation.
Absolute pleasure. Before we get into EBBA and your work at EBBA, the whole of Europe is suffering with this COVID problem at the moment. Tell me how things are in your native Norway, and I hope all your colleagues, family and friends are staying safe and well over there.
Yeah, on the personal level, I'm doing okay. All my family, we have jobs, we have good health. So that's the good news. On the band activities, we are closed down for the moment, which we have been since October, November.
Well, we can only hope that with the introduction of vaccines and vaccination procedures now in place across Europe, that there's some light at the end of the tunnel and we can hopefully all return to some sort of normality as soon as possible. Now, it was announced last week, Ulf, that the European Championships are coming to England in 2022, and I want to come back to that, obviously, as part of our discussions. But before that, I'm conscious that there's going to be many people watching today that aren't fully aware of who EBBA is. They know you for putting on the European Championships each year, but for somebody who's not had an intimate understanding or knowledge of EBBA, just give us a brief outline of how the structure works, how the organization works, and what its main role is.
Our main activity is to run and manage the European Brass Band Championships, including the side events, which has been developed over a few years now. We are running that in a new country every year, sometimes in a new country where they have no experience of doing international brass bands event. And the European Brass Band Championships is acknowledged as being the most prestigious band contest in the world.
Okay, perfect. You have been the president of EBBA for some 14 years now. That's quite an achievement. Now, I was having a look on your website at some of the aims and objectives of the competition, and there's some which came out and struck me, and I want to get your thoughts on each of these. Now, there's 3 or 4 examples that are listed on your website, Ulf, of separate aims and objectives of EBBA, and I'd like you to quote me some examples of work that you've pioneered in these areas. Each year, EBBA will plan, organise and supervise the European Brass Band Championships together with any appropriate events, for example, conferences, forums, meetings, workshops and masterclasses for European brass bands, musicians, conductors, jury and panel members.
It's correct to say that these big, hairy goals defined by our funding fathers back in 1995, we have focused on established the European as the most prestigious band contest in the world. However, every year, through the organization of the European and also with events going on in different parts of the year, we contribute to these goals and objectives.
Okay, let's go on to the next one. It says further, EBBA will make efforts to establish contacts with music education institutions to better promote recognition of the brass band within the context of music studies. What's happened on that one, Ulf?
Many years when we have been doing the European soloist contest and also the conductor competition, that had happened in conjunction with a local conservatory. That actually happened the first year when I was responsible in the Stavanger European in 2008. It was all run through together with the conservatory in Stavanger, and we have repeated that exercise several times for the soloist competition and the conductor competition, also on a wider level involving professional orchestras, professional ensembles in the conducting competition and also the soloist competition. For instance, in Montreux 2011, in Switzerland, it was planned to happen in Palangga last year. It was planned to happen in Malmö this year, that professional ensembles take part in the event in different ways.
Okay, I've been involved, running about with the Europeans for many years, Ulf, and I've never heard this.
Of course, we could have promoted this more, we could have focused it more, we could have highlighted it more, but it's an important part of what we do is to deliver on these objectives.
But would you say there's a little bit more work to be done then, Ulf, on the PR and the promotion and the news aspect of your activities?
You have heard me say this before. The phrase I've been used before, the biggest room in the world is a room for improvement. Yes, we can improve more, and we will do. And actually, the weekend of after this famous 12th of March, when everything went into lockdown, that particular weekend, we had planned an EBA internal seminar with the executive committee to meet together on an away day.
Now, I want to move on to EBA's finances. A little over 3 years ago, you had reserves of over 100,000 euros, yet in your accounts to the end of 2019, those reserves are dwindled down to 37,000. And indeed, before the Montreux festival, we're down to as little as 25,000 euros in reserve. Now, with there being no event in 2020, how has that now further troubled EBA's finances, and how are things looking in your finances for 2021?
We have strengthened our finances, and the 2019 result were positive. The 2020 results will also, bottom line, will also be positive, and we plan for a positive year in 2021. However, the savings we had was for a rainy day, and 2015, when we didn't have a local organizer who could take the full responsibility of the event, that was our rainy day. And due to the very short time schedule, it was impossible for us. And also because we were not kind of native in Freiburg in Germany, we didn't have access to local fundings for commission of pieces, for opening ceremony and these elements. So we decided to run the event in full scale and using some of our fundings for that. What we also have done in these during this year is to establish and renew the sponsor agreements, and also to travel to the different cities that were where we had lined up before the COVID arrived. Palangga, Malmö, Stavanger, Innsbruck, Gateshead. And that also has a cost side. So in order to line up these 5 years and secure the fundament for EBA, we took some spending. However, we are now back in black numbers. As I said, we have a very slim organization. The only person who actually have a fee is the general secretary, a very limited fee. The rest of us only get expenses covered when we travel and other expenses you might have. That is paid for through the membership money that we receive from the countries. That's very limited money. My little school band pay more for the membership in the Norwegian Band Federation than the Norwegian Federation pay to EBA. However, that's the membership money, and that is the running of the event. Then we have.
How much is that per country, Ulf?
From the top of my head, I haven't got the exact numbers, 700 something per country.
Okay.
Then you have the sign-on fee, and I can't remember the exact figure for that, but the entry fee from each band, that is for the running of EBA. And we also have the rights for recording, video, DVDs, all this, which also go into the lump sum for running of EBA. The sponsorship money we get are all allocated to the bands in prices. And also some of this recording money are also going into the prices. So
if you said that the money from the recording, streaming and sponsorship goes into prize funds, in your accounts, there was 19,500 of money that went in out of sponsorship of 40,000. So the remaining 21,000 went into towards what? EBA general expenses?
EBA's general expenses, travels, and running of the organization. Contribution from the sponsors are, and I can dive into this, of course, if you want me to do that. I can't take this from the top of my head, and I haven't got the figures in front of me, and you didn't tell me, you didn't give me a warning before that you're going to ask these specific questions. However, I'm happy to answer all these later. But the main thing is that we also generate a lot more money in sponsoring in the form of instrument that goes to the band in the competition, and they are necessarily not booked in a bus account and out. They go directly from the sponsor to the band.
Yeah, we can understand that, and we want to go on to the prize fund and prize monies a little bit later. You've spent over 60,000 euros on hotels, on airfares, and on meetings and travel. So an average of 30,000 euros a year. Is that money well spent, Ulf?
Yes, that's very well spent. And some of this is also, or most of it is actually for the EBA team being present at the event. That is in reality paid for by the local organizer. However, the local organizers pay a lump sum to EBA, and when I have expenses for travel, I claim that.
But I want to move on now to the European Youth Band. How did this come about, and why is this so important as part of each year's championships?
Your fellow countryman, Robert Morgan, who was the vice president of EBA and did an enormous job for EBA. I remember so well, he said when we had the European Youth Brass Band for the first time, and also for the second time, he said some of us are very passionate about this.
Okay. Now, as I understand, Ulf, the European Youth Band only meets on the week of the championships and doesn't meet at any other time during the year.
Yeah, the finances doesn't allow that, and we haven't got any external funding to do this on a regular basis.
The members who are selected for the European Youth Band, they pay their own travel to wherever the championships is being held. But once they're there, it's the local organisers who support and pay for their accommodation, their meals, their music tuition, their transport, and that funding is usually taken from ticket sales and can amount to somewhere around 35 to 40,000 euros per event. Is that correct?
Not exactly. First of all, normally the band players get a support from their federation for the travel.
So when the Europeans come to England in 2022, England will be supporting the European Youth Band.
That's a part of the discussion we have with England. We had a meeting on their contract actually yesterday for Birmingham, and we are still discussing how we can make the youth band happening.
Can I just pick you up on something that you just said? You said you were working on the contract. Has the contract not been signed with England yet?
No, it's not signed with England. However, we are agreed that it will happen in Birmingham 2022.
Okay, but you've announced a press release that this will happen.
Yes.
Ahead of signing a contract. That seems to be putting the cart a little bit before the horse.
Based on the fact that we had an agreement with, or we get support from our delegate meeting at that. We had a decision in the executive committee. We had a decision in the board of trustees in Brass Bands England, and we agreed on all the basic terms and condition. When you have something in a meeting with 25, 30 people, it's fair, and you agree and you make a decision on the basis of that. It's fair to announce that. And when you know and you feel pretty sure that you are agreed on everything. And the meeting we had yesterday in a very constructive and very supportive and very committed atmosphere tells me that this was a fact.
Yeah, it just surprises me a little, Ulf, that as a businessman, and you're a businessman as well, that announcements are made before contracts are signed, and it seems possibly to be premature. But I want to ask you, why was the 2022 championships awarded to England when You have a perfectly good city and venue in Palangga, and that seems to have been ignored.
We're thinking and had to rethink and considering how can we make the start of the European after 2 years of cancellation, giving it a smashing start in the world-class concert hall, maybe one of the best halls there are in Europe, in a country where we can kind of restart it after the COVID, back to the cradle of the brass band movement. And we get the full support from our delegates to go that direction. And even though there wasn't a vote because it was a delegate meeting, more like an information meeting, but I clearly stated in a meeting several times that if anyone wants to pull the emergency brake, this is the time to do it.
We talked earlier about the amount of money spent on milestone meetings, and Palangga was due to host the 2020 championships. Presumably you had full confidence after all these milestone meetings and with the organisation team and the hall, that the championships of 2020 would be fantastic over there. And yet, as I understand, they weren't even offered the 2022 championships. And in January, you had confirmed to them that the championships were going to be held in England in 2022. But ahead of that, I also understand that the championships were offered to Malmo, which was cancelled in 2021, but they were unable to accept in 2022. Why weren't these guys even offered the 2022 championships when they are in such an advanced level of preparation?
It's not true that we offered the event to Malmö. Malmö told us on a very early stage that the hall wasn't available in 2022.
Why would they tell you that if you hadn't asked them?
Because they were obviously, after having their event cancelled in 2021, they were looking into alternatives. And they quite soon figured out that 2022 was not an alternative for them.
Why was the championships not offered to Palangga?
We did a consideration, how can we give the European a smashing start, a restart after the COVID. That was the rationale behind it, which I expressed informally to the team of the Palangga organization, eventually in a formal letter to the mayor, who supported that fully and understood it.
Okay, but how many years do you think it would take an organizing team to organize a fantastic European event? You're handing out contracts to cities 4 or 5 years in advance. And I think I share the same view as many other people, that you have there a perfect host city that you have expressed your own confidence in running a fabulous championships. The organizing team is great. The hall is now up to scratch. And yet they were ignored. And it seems to myself and also to many other people that it was almost a desperate move to not give it to Palangga and to put it into the hands of another country.
I agree on all the favorable things you say about Palangga, team, the environment. Extremely much looking forward to going to Palangga, helping them to picking up the contact with the organizing team, do the first Zoom meetings, travel there again to really see that all the things that we have planned still is in place.
Yeah, I understand all of that. And there were some very nice words there. But what I can't yet get a clear answer in is to why they were not even offered 2022.
We wanted to see how we could get the best out of a restart after so long time of suffering, problems in Europe, the biggest crisis we have had in Europe since the Spanish flu on the health side. And I'm so pleased that the English Federation, Brass Bands England, were able to come up with a concept for that, which were presented to the delegates and given a good support. And also that the other host countries that were lined up and obviously had their event delayed for the obvious reasons, very supportive of this. So that was why we did it, and that is how it will be.
Okay. I understand, Ulf, that at the delegates meeting that you had on the 31st of January, many of the country delegates weren't even aware that there was a plan to bring the European Championships to England. Is that correct?
That's correct. That was an information meeting. The executive committee has the mandate to make these decisions, and we were stressed on time for the offer given us by Brassbands England, because they had penciled in the event to the Birmingham Symphony Hall, and they needed a quick answer from the hall if they were going to take it or not. Because of there is a kind of a rush into all the big concert halls and events venues in Europe for 2022 to host all the delayed and postponed and cancelled events. So there was a slot, and they needed to confirm that, and therefore.
So what was your main reservation about Palangga?
I can't express any reservations. We are now in a situation where we have a well-prepared team, an improved venue, an excellent environment, the wonderful Amber Museum, nice location for the European Youth Brass Band, and everything is in place. And
so with all that you've said, Ulf, it's again, I'm failing to grasp why you don't offer those championships to Palangga. The first time it would ever be in a Baltic country. It's doing everything that EBBA is set out to do about expanding the wonderful brass band community that we have. They spent years in preparation, and yet you make a decision to change the venue and to give it to a team with a little over 15 months to organise an event.
I really trust that Brassbands England will be able to run this event in these 15 months' time. It will be an wonderful event in 2022, and that we will come back to Palangga very soon and in due course.
Yeah, we could bat this backwards and forwards all day, Ulf, and I think I want to look forward to 2023, because as I understand, again, there are some issues. Palangga has said they would then want the championships in 2023 because it's the last year of their current political administration within there. Malmo has said we need 23 because our investment and our money is only guaranteed until the end of 23. Now, you have a situation where you're going to have to give 23 to either Malmo or Palangga. Somebody's going to be disappointed. Which one is it going to be?
And that is the hard thing that we have to deal with in the next weeks. And I will do my utmost to find a good conclusion that caters the needs for the different countries. I think we will find a good solution for all parties involved. I really hope so.
Well, let's hope that happens in the next few weeks or so. Now, recently you went on record to say that the competing bands are the owners of the European Brass Band Championships event. Do you stand by that statement?
I would expand it a little bit. That is the movement who is the owner, and we manage this on behalf of the owner and on behalf of the movement. And among these is, of course, the most important factor is the competing bands, the audiences, the host organization, the sponsors. First thing, I think, how are we going to give this wonderful experience for the bands who are going on stage today?
That's a great outlook to have, Ulf. And the bands currently, or historically, have been paying somewhere between 20 and 25,000 euros each to attend the Europeans. So how can bands justify spending out 20 to 25,000 euros on attending the European Championships when, first of all, they're not paid a single penny in travel expenses under the historic streaming and recording contracts? Their performances are recorded and profit is made by outside companies of which they don't receive a penny, and people like the European Youth Band arrive at the same venues and are subsidised through whatever means, but the bands are having to pay everything out. And then when it comes to the prize money, the prize fund is then exaggerated by the inclusion of instruments. How do you respond to that, Ulf?
It's a big concern, and that's why I acknowledge the bands being the most important stakeholders we have, because the bands are the ones who are investing most in this event.
How is EBBA adapting to the new COVID era and the new normal? Because let's face it, bands are not going to be able to afford to go to the Europeans. If I was a band manager faced with a bill of 20 to 25,000 euros to play at a contest where I'm probably not going to get a fraction of that back in prize money. And from everything you said today, Ulf, there's nothing that I've picked up on to say that, yes, EBBA will assist the competing bands in costs. Nothing at all. But yet the European Youth Band is subsidised to around €1,000 per player. But the competing bands, which is the main part of the commerciality of the event, of the essence and of the body of the event, are paying everything top dollar and receiving back extremely little. Now, if I was a band manager, I would have to question whether the use of those funds is best served going to the Europeans or not.
Our consideration have been, and all the bands in the European, on individual basis, decided that we are going to do this investment to improve our playing, to meet competitors on the highest level, to play in one of the finest concert halls. The money from the youth ban couldn't necessarily be used elsewhere. As some federations are supporting their bands, some are to a very, very limited degree. We will, of course, consider how we can help the bands participate. It's never an option for us to use our money on other topics like paid staff or any other cost that we can't defend.
Okay, I understand all that, Ulf. As a band manager yourself, do you think it's fair that your image and performance rights are taken by a separate company and you receive nothing for that?
As I say, that EBBA, in the contract between EBBA and the bands, these rights belongs to EBBA, and we...
Historically, that has been the case, Ulf. I'm asking, do you think it's fair?
EBBA has been using this money to run and to build the event. If there are income streams that we can share with the bands, I'm willing to consider that and see how we can do that.
I understand that. My question was, do you think it's fair?
It's a part of the concept of the European so far.
Okay, so now is the perfect time for EBBA, after a 2-year break, to say, you know what, bands, we're going to help you, and we are going to redistribute some of the monies which are coming in. We're going to renegotiate the media contracts, and we want to make this a fairer playing field. So can you confirm that for the English event of 2022, there will be any financial support coming in the way of any of the competing bands?
I can't confirm that because we don't know the income streams yet, and we haven't finished all negotiation contracts, and we don't know the full picture of this in fall 2022. But I take your advice that this is definitely something we have to consider and look into.
Okay. When do you think, Ulf, then, you would be in a position to confirm to bands that, yes, from 2022 onwards, there's going to be some kind of contribution either towards travel or your rights or anything, so that bands can see that EBBA is sharing in their pain or understanding the commercial environment that they're having to deal with?
Currently, we don't have these kind of reserves. If we get them in the future, we will consider how we can develop this event the best way.
Okay, so the tickets for the championships now are the fastest selling brass band contest ticket in history. They sell out within minutes. Okay, why not just up the ticket prices, and from that additional revenue that you gain from that, either through a local organization or through an EBBA mandate, you create a fund that helps support the bands attend the event? Because at the moment, as I said, I think the bands are almost being exploited. They're right at the bottom of the list because there's subsidies which go to the youth band, there are free tickets which go through the local organisers, EBBA gets its hotel rooms paid, but the bands have to pay absolutely everything, Ulf. And I think in this current pandemic, there should be some recognition of that.
I wouldn't say that we haven't been thinking of that. We have discussed actually the ticket price, and it's important for us to also underline, or the other side of this dilemma is that you can of course increase the ticket sales, and there are people who are willing to give the right hand to get the ticket for the European Championships. And you're right, we're selling out very fastly. However, it's still a part of our legacy, our tradition, that we are a labor movement, or at least a movement where everybody can take part. So there is a limit how high cost we can put on the tickets. One thing we definitely do is that the whole team of EBBA is working free of any kind of fee apart from this expenses we get covered. But we are in the same boat as the players, as we also are giving up an awful lot of time for the preparation of the event. So how to balance this in the future is a challenging and very important question, and we are discussing that internally, and also we'll discuss it with our delegates.
I'll give you a scenario, I think, Ulf, that if this pandemic continues, which everybody expects it will do in some form or other, and it will be with us with years or 4 years, that bands will simply not be able to afford to attend the European Championships, or decide that the money that they are investing in the European Championships is going to be better spent elsewhere. How are you going to stop that?
We are not in a position to stop that. The bands will always do their own considerations. However, by providing a fantastic event in a fantastic environment and competitive environment in wonderful halls run by very hospitable people, we are hopefully being attractive, so we can make the event, the competition, that goes for all band events, that goes for all culture events, attractive to the participants also in the future.
Yeah, I understand all of that, Ulf.
That's a huge challenge.
And one of the phrases which I absolutely love when you say is that you want to give bands a gig of a lifetime, which is such a fantastic thing to do. But what happens, Ulf, when that gig of a lifetime becomes a financial and administrative headache and nightmare year after year for the bands that are attending the Europeans year after year? They're the ones who are splashing out all the money and getting nothing back in return. Now, yes, they get a great ovation from the audience, but there will come a time, and I predict that time will come very quickly, when the equation of spending 25,000 euros going to the Europeans, or investing that in services, equipment, or even a tour for your own band, becomes more of a priority than getting a good ovation in a good concert hall.
Being a band manager myself for 25 years, I know that this investment you do in the European is also giving the band a lot. Not only the gig of the year, but the preparation phase, the quality, the exchange with the other bands, and all the values that are not financial values, but all the other values that are integrated with that. Our goal is to be so attractive that we can be the prioritized event for all these champion bands.
I thank you for your answers on there, Ulf. And clearly, EBBA has some challenges going forward in attracting or continuing to attract bands to this event. In the last 12 months, we have seen a huge rise in racial equality campaigns, things like Black Lives Matter. And I had a look on your website, and I can't see anything on there, Ulf, about diversity or EBBA's plan to increase diversity within the European banding movement.
So currently we don't have a written policy However, yeah, for instance, the gender issue you have in jury members is hard, it's difficult, but we surely need to develop something also on this in order to comply with the expectations that are reasonable to have to a European organization. And we need to pick up on this when we are able to meet again and to sit together and take the learnings from the federations who have had policies developed on this.
Okay, so we can expect a diversity policy to be on EBBA's website sometime this year.
I can't promise anything on that, but I'm saying we will look into it.
Now, I want to summarize where I think this interview has taken us, Ulf. Clearly, as a contest organizer, a contest arranger, EBBA is doing some fabulous work behind the scenes to get countries lined up and to use your expertise to get the best brass band event in the world. However, apart from that, I've not seen a great deal of examples of work done outside the organisation. I'm not seeing a great vision going forward. I'm seeing a leadership with status quo written clearly that you see the need to change coming very slowly. I don't see any consideration towards work and the event in a post-COVID or current COVID era, or consideration towards band finances or to share the load, if I can put it that way. All those things together, is EBBA fit for purpose?
EBBA is fit for purpose. We are running the world's most prestigious band contest. We can't take that for granted. EBBA has been an important element in developing new countries in the brass band field, like France, like Lithuania, Austria, Italy, and last time we also had a band from Spain in Malagga. I know from my background in Norway that the quality wonder in the band environment in Norway is also connected to hosting the European, participating in the European, and using the European as a flagship event and a locomotive that is pulling the movement forward. I can clearly see how Norway has put in enormous resources into this event as hosting and contributing. However, we need to re-establish the event after this 2 years of interruption. And I'm very proud that we have this now lined up for 2022 with a wonderful concert hall, with an excellent organizer. We will soon conclude the discussions with the other countries that are on the list and search for new countries hosting the event in the future. We are in good dialogue with sponsors. We would like to have more sponsors involved to contribute to the prize money and also to the band's participation. So with your business, Martin, you're welcome to consider that with us. And
we already have done, Ulf.
And I'm pleased to see how strongly support we got from the people that represents the stakeholders, which is the delegates who are representing EBBA and the general meeting. And remember, all these bands who are now struggling, having big problems financial, who are trying to survive after this COVID situation, they all have a national band federation who is the primary responsible to look after their interests. What I learned from the dialogue with some of these organizations, which I talk to rather frequently because we are going to host the European in their countries.
How can EBBA help the bands?
EBBA is a sum of what the federations contribute to EBBA, and we have to maintain the fantastic event, maintain the quality, maintain and develop our policies, maintain and develop the challenges we see. You have challenged us our gender policy. I could name a few other where we need to develop. And as I said, the biggest room in the world is for improvement, and I'm sure we will do in the future.
Well, in the time-honoured phrase, Ulf, only time will tell on that, and I obviously wish you the very, very best for the coming years with EBBA. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure to be in your company again.
Thank you very much for that.
Pleasure. Ulf Rosenberg there with a fantastic interview and a great insight into what's happening at EBBA. Some controversial elements within that, I'm sure you'll agree. Now, we want to hear from you as well. What are your views on today's interview? What about what Ulf had to say about the bands and the involvement of the bands in the future, about the limitations of EBBA, the financial restraints they're working on, and anything else that you want to mention? It's here on Facebook. It's here for your involvement. It's here for your suggestions and discussion. So let's hear from you. Thanks for watching.